Markle's ex-husband, Trevor Engelson, got back in contact with the fake Duchess.
He does mention that she looked pregnant in the article, but he doesn't. But he says that's me. It's from 1997 of Rachel Meghan Markle, who had given birth to a child.
Most people realize their marriage is over through a talk, maybe a phone call, maybe even a letter. But Trevor Engelson got none of that. What he received instead? A FedEx package? Inside it, his sparkling diamond engagement ring, sent back like a returned item.
She returned the engagement ring via post, having dumped him by text message.
No explanation, no goodbye, just a plain box and the heavy silence of a chapter slammed shut. The public saw that moment and labeled it harsh, even calculated. A bold Hollywood-style move from someone already stepping into a bigger spotlight. But Trevor didn't see it the same way, because Trevor knew something nobody else did. He wasn't just a man left behind.
Trevor Engelson, a film producer, but they split in August 2013. They were together for 9 years and married.
He was the last person who had seen a version of Meghan Markle that the world was never meant to see. The version before the palace, before the titles, before the polished image that later won over an entire royal circle.
Information came direct from Meghan's ex-husband. He reveals that Meghan Markle married for money, that she planned it all from the beginning, and the vision board with Prince Harry on it was revealed to her by someone who knew.
And according to people close to him, what Trevor knows goes far beyond a broken relationship. It points to something deeper, a past that was allegedly wiped away. A story quietly packed up, sealed off, and sent away, just like that ring. But here's the thing, the past doesn't stay boxed up forever. Trevor Engelson wasn't royalty. He wasn't some ultra-connected power figure or a billionaire living in luxury. He was just a regular guy who believed in her, back when believing in her wasn't the easy choice.
Meghan, you can't build an empire when you're burning through your architects. No amount of branded coffee or curated glossy Instagram posts can make the instability.
When Meghan was still chasing auditions, still pushing to be taken seriously in an industry that hands out rejection like flyers, Trevor was there, steady, supportive, watching her ambition up close, real, intense, and non-stop. And that's exactly what made him risky to ignore. Because the people who knew you before the glow-up, they remember what was underneath it.
More and more digging in the alleged teen pregnancy, and the findings are shocking.
Trevor didn't fall for a duchess. He fell for someone still on the way to becoming one. He saw the determination that would one day lead to places like Windsor Castle. But he also reportedly noticed moments that didn't fully connect. Small inconsistencies, quiet gaps. Times when the public version didn't quite match the private one sitting across from him at dinner. He wasn't just watching her rise. According to insiders, he was watching how that rise was built. And that's a very different story. But to understand what Trevor may have seen, you have to go back, way back, before the marriage, before Hollywood.
Multi-ethnic, and she's been married. She already has a kid from someone, or divorced. I mean, everything. You're not supposed to be in a Catholic family or whatever.
Back to the years Meghan has never fully explained. The years that, according to insiders, may hold the most talked about mystery of all. Every public figure has a timeline, a clean, organized story from point A to point B, with all the key moments clearly laid out. Meghan's version follows that same pattern. Northwestern University, early acting roles. Suits, then marriage into royalty. Smooth, inspiring, easy to follow. But look a little closer, and suddenly, something doesn't quite add up.
And it seems like she'd convinced him that they needed to marry, and they needed to marry quickly.
Yes.
There's a stretch of time in her late teens, the late 90s, that has never been fully explained. Most people at that age follow a pretty clear routine. School, maybe a part-time job, figuring life out step by step. It's messy, but it's visible. But Meghan's version of those years? It feels different. More like a blur filled with vague phrases. Travel, self-discovery, finding her voice. Words that sound deep, but when you really listen, don't actually say much.
Sussex also ironed out childcare details in order to ensure that Engelson was happy to pay for a nanny to help her.
And according to insiders, that lack of detail isn't by accident. The claim that keeps coming up in quiet, behind-the-scenes conversations is that those missing years weren't spent casually exploring Europe or building early career experience. Instead, they were allegedly tied to something far more personal, something that, if proven true, could completely shift the official story. A secret that was reportedly handled fast, quietly, and with serious precision. Not panic, but planning.
Did the royal family know? did Mr. Markle know?
And the name connected to that secret? It's not one you'll find in any official bio. Not a celebrity, not a mentor, not a public figure. Just a regular guy. Someone from a chapter of her life that was allegedly locked down so tightly, it was never meant to come out. But here's the twist. Sealed doesn't always mean gone, because this name has a way of popping back up. Joe Giuliano. Not famous, not in headlines, not walking red carpets. Just an everyday person tied to a part of Meghan's story that reportedly never made it into the public timeline. And the rumor connected to his name? It's been circulating quietly for years in very specific circles. The story goes like this. At just 18 years old, Meghan allegedly went to a small chapel in Las Vegas. No crowd, no cameras, no big announcement. Just her, a man named Joe, some paperwork, and a decision that would supposedly echo for years to come. And before anyone outside that moment could even catch on, it was allegedly already being reversed.
His first wedding to a TV producer named Trevor Engelson took place at a beachfront resort 7 years ago.
A quiet annulment, sealed documents, the kind of legal cleanup that can shrink a major life event into almost nothing, and then make it disappear completely. For most people, a quick teenage marriage is just an awkward memory, maybe even a story you laugh about years later. But Meghan wasn't building a normal life story. She was building something much bigger. And in that kind of path, a hidden first marriage, one that came before Trevor, before Hollywood, before everything, doesn't just fade away. It creates questions. Because in the world she was stepping into, even the smallest detail can grow into something much bigger.
But why so many family secrets? Because now the royal family is being dragged into keeping.
So the record was reportedly sealed, the connection buried, and Joe Giuliano became a name that wasn't supposed to be spoken out loud. But here's the reality about secrets, especially the ones handled quickly. They don't always stay quiet forever. You can lock away documents, you can bury records, but what comes after? That's a lot harder to control. And that's where this story shifts, from something that could be brushed off to something much harder to explain away.
What I learned about myself is no matter what my name is or what people call me, I'm still the same person. So that didn't change who I am. And maybe that's probably the biggest distinguishing factor.
Because the conversation that's been quietly building around this isn't just about the past anymore. It's about what might have come next. This isn't just about a sealed marriage anymore. It's about what that marriage allegedly led to. A child, a girl, and according to years of growing speculation, her name is Noel. The claim goes like this. Born in the mid-90s, Noel was reportedly raised by the Giuliano family in Chicago. Quietly, privately, far away from cameras, auditions, and the carefully shaped public image that was starting to form while Meghan was at Northwestern, and later stepping into her acting career. While one life was building in the spotlight, another was allegedly unfolding in the background.
Advised Prince Harry to wait a year before marrying Meghan Markle, according to a new biography.
Noel was said to be growing up in the Midwest, surrounded by people who knew the full story, but kept it completely locked away. And here's where it starts to feel bigger than just talk. When people compare this claim to Meghan's official timeline, there are gaps that raise eyebrows, moments where things go unusually quiet, periods where she wasn't publicly seen, not explained, not announced, just gone. Insiders suggest those weren't simple breaks or creative time-offs. They were allegedly quiet trips to Chicago, visits to a family connected to a deeply personal chapter just hours away from the spotlight she was chasing.
Are their children even real? So why do these rumors continue to persist, and what is behind them?
And slowly, people in Chicago have reportedly started to speak. Not loudly, not publicly, but in that quiet way, stories begin to surface, one conversation at a time. They describe a young girl who, they say, bears a strong resemblance to Meghan. The same eyes, the same presence, always around at family gatherings, yet never formally introduced, never explained, treated like someone who belonged, but wasn't meant to be talked about. If those accounts are true, the picture they create isn't simple. It's not about labeling anyone. It's about a difficult choice, a trade-off that may have been made early on. The idea that in order to move forward, certain parts of life had to stay behind. But time doesn't stay still, and people grow up. Because if Noel was born in the mid-90s, she's not little anymore. She's in her late 20s now, old enough to have built her own path, her own life. And according to the latest quiet conversations around this story, possibly even a family of her own.
She had an entanglement, just like Jada Pinkett Smith, that she became entangled.
And that's where things take another turn. Because if those reports were ever confirmed, this wouldn't just be about a hidden chapter. It would completely reshape the narrative. It would suggest that Meghan's story includes more layers than the public has ever seen. And from the outside, that contrast would raise questions, especially when you look at the public image built around family, motherhood, and authenticity. The podcasts, the interviews, the carefully shared moments with Archie and Lily, all of it telling one story, while another, if true, has remained completely out of view. All of it carefully presented to show the world exactly what kind of mother she is.
Being a part of this family and the platform that comes with that is an incredible responsibility that I take really seriously.
But underneath that polished image, there's the alleged reality of an offspring living quietly in the Midwest, a daughter raising little ones of her own, a child who, according to the claims, shares Meghan's bloodline, but not her last name, her title, or her public story. That contrast isn't just surprising. It's the kind that raises serious questions once people start looking closer. And according to those familiar with the situation, there's real concern behind the scenes about this story gaining attention because the impact wouldn't stop at personal headlines. This isn't something that could easily be reframed or smoothed over. If true, it would point to a long hidden chapter, one that stretches across generations, a private family story existing completely outside the official narrative. Some even suggest that one day the people connected to that story, especially the next generation, may start asking their own questions about where they come from.
Secret relationship with Meghan's ex-husband, her first husband, Trevor Engelson.
And that's where things become harder to keep quiet, because stories like this don't stay hidden forever, especially when family is involved. Now think about it from another angle. A young woman, reportedly growing up while seeing Meghan everywhere, on magazine covers, in interviews, giving speeches about compassion and authenticity to millions of people who had no idea about the parts of the story that may have been left out. That kind of silence, it builds over time. But to understand how something like this could stay hidden for so long, you have to look at the bigger picture, the strategy behind it.
Times her ex-husband. I'm sure
Meghan's?
Yes, I met him like personally. Whatever.
The long-term vision that, according to insiders, started years before the royal spotlight, even before Trevor Engelson ever received that FedEx package. There's one detail in particular that keeps coming up. Something small, but once you hear it, it changes how everything looks. According to multiple insiders, including journalists who have followed this story closely, a young Meghan Markle reportedly had a vision board. And on that board, a photo of Prince Harry. Let that sink in for a second. This wasn't just a random celebrity photo or a simple crush moment. It was allegedly placed there with intention, a goal, a direction, something she was working toward long before anyone else saw the bigger picture. So that famous meeting in a London bar, the one often described as a chance encounter, might not have been as random as it seemed.
And Trevor, being the gentleman and good guy that he is, who'd been ignored by Meghan for years at this point.
According to those close to the story, it was actually the result of long-term planning, a path that had been forming for years. And Trevor Engelson, he was reportedly there during those early stages. He saw the process unfold, the mindset, the focus, the way opportunities and connections were carefully managed. It wasn't just ambition, it was strategy. Every relationship, every step, every public moment, filtered through one key question. Does this move things forward? Because when the goal is something as big as Windsor Castle, nothing gets left to chance. The story had to be clean, simple, easy to follow. A self-made woman who meets a prince, an actress who beats the odds, an outsider bringing something new into an old institution.
Not the only one from Trevor, and this other person could make a lot of money as well from this.
And that version only works if everything moves in a straight line. No detours, no complications. Because once you add in things like a teenage wedding in Las Vegas, a sealed annulment, or a daughter growing up far from the spotlight, the story changes completely. So, according to insiders, those parts were allegedly removed, not rushed, not messy, but carefully handled, just like everything else. The vision wasn't just about where she was going. It was also about what couldn't come along for the ride. And Trevor, he reportedly saw all of it. Which brings up the big question. If he knows so much, why has he stayed completely silent? Because people have asked. Major publishers, big interviews, even offers with serious money on the table. And he's turned it all down. No statements, no hints, nothing.
Not going to out her and do things that he could do to really damage her reputation.
At first glance, it might seem like he just wants privacy. Maybe he chose to move on quietly. but people who know him suggest there's more to it. They say his silence isn't just about being respectful, it's strategic. Because the moment he speaks, he risks being labeled, dismissed, or pulled into a public battle. But by staying quiet, he keeps control. And that kind of silence carries weight. Every time a new rumor appears, every time the story shifts even slightly, attention circles right back to him. Not because of what he said, but because of what he hasn't. That's where the real tension sits. Because according to insiders, Trevor may still have pieces of the past, messages, photos, and moments from those early years.
Determinedness that almost, I would say, mercenary, cold-blooded. She'd set her sight.
Things that, if ever revealed, could challenge the version of events the world already knows. Private conversations, real-life details, the kind of moments people don't think will ever be seen later. And if those pieces exist, they don't just tell a story, they show a version of it that was never meant to be public. According to insiders, this is what causes the most concern. Not an old relationship coming back up, but the timeline itself. Because if that timeline doesn't match, everything starts to shift. The idea is simple. If the version of the past doesn't line up with what was later presented, it raises serious questions. And Trevor? He's the one who reportedly knows what came before everything changed. And in a story built so carefully around what came after, the before becomes the most sensitive part of all. So he stays quiet, and as time passes, the pressure keeps building without him even doing anything.
Moving that much. And then he tries to relax a bit. She lets go of him.
Connections in Chicago? Harder to keep under wraps. Digital traces? Easier to find than ever. And his position? Stronger, just by staying silent. But pressure like that doesn't stay contained forever. Because in every long-held secret, there's always a breaking point. A moment when the people carrying it start to feel the weight differently. What once felt like loyalty can slowly turn into something heavier, something harder to keep holding on to. And according to multiple sources, that shift may already be happening among people connected to the Giuliano circle. Not in a loud, dramatic way, no big reveals, no headlines, at least not yet. Instead, it's subtle. A comment at a gathering that goes a little too far. A conversation that lingers a little longer than it should. Someone remembering more than expected, and no longer feeling the same need to stay quiet.
Your ex. And he's like, yup. And I'm like, I go, you think she's going to close? And he's like, oh, she'll close. And I don't want to get into more.
These are the small cracks, the ones that slowly grow into something much bigger. And the accounts coming out of Chicago all seem to describe something similar. A young girl who was always around, present at family events, included, but never fully explained. Not introduced formally, not described in clear terms, just there. Not a visitor, not temporary, someone who belonged, but in a way that was never meant to be discussed openly. And the people who remember this, they don't describe rumors. They describe moments they saw themselves, at dinners, at gatherings, in everyday life. And now those memories are starting to surface in conversations that don't always stay private. But it doesn't stop there. Because beyond personal accounts, there's another factor, the digital world.
But a double Markle glow at the most recent appearance of the Harkles at the United Nations when Harry was giving his speech.
The internet doesn't forget things the way people try to. Someone growing up in Chicago during that time would have left traces, school records, photos, everyday details of life. Years ago, that kind of information might have stayed hidden. Today, it's just a few searches away for anyone curious enough to look. And if those claims about Noel are true, then parts of that story may exist online too. And once something is online, it doesn't stay quiet forever. Now imagine the wider impact. Because this wouldn't just affect one person. It would raise questions on a much bigger level. A globally watched family, a carefully reviewed background, a story that was accepted and presented to the world.
All attempting to turn on his ex-wife.
If something this significant was ever confirmed, people wouldn't just ask what happened. They'd ask how it was missed. And that's the part insiders say causes the most concern. Not just the personal side, but what it would mean on a larger scale. And through all of this, Trevor Engelson stays exactly where he's been, at a distance, watching it all unfold, and still saying absolutely nothing. The pressure keeps building around this story, and the one person who could speak, he still hasn't. Because here's what is actually known for sure. A ring was sent back in a FedEx box. A marriage ended without a real conversation. And the man who witnessed it all has stayed completely silent for years. Everything else? It sits in that gray area between claims and confirmation. A reported chapel wedding in Las Vegas, a sealed annulment, a young woman named Noel, said to have been raised quietly in Chicago by a family holding on to a long-kept story. None of it has been officially proven, but none of it has disappeared either. And that's what keeps people watching.
Husband Trevor pay for a personal trainer and a nutritionist to help her bounce back if and when they conceive.
Because stories like this don't stick around for no reason. They stay alive when details don't quite match up, when timelines leave gaps, when pieces don't fully connect. And then there's that detail about a vision board with a prince's photo on it, which, if true, makes everything feel a lot more intentional. For years, Meghan Markle has shared her story on her own terms, through interviews, statements, and even a Harry and Meghan series built around a carefully presented narrative. And for a long time, that approach worked. People believed the fairy tale because it was told so clearly. But once a story is shared with the world, people start asking about the parts they didn't see. The missing years, the Chicago connection, and the one person who might have answers, but continues to stay silent. Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed the video, don't forget to hit like, drop a comment, and subscribe to Crown Clash. I post new videos every day, so you definitely don't want to miss what's coming next.